Welcome to Connected by Health. I'm Dr. Krishna Madala. This is where medicine meets leadership, innovation, and humanity with one goal: to add value and help change healthcare for the better. If you believe health is about more than a diagnosis, you're in the right place. In medicine, we often talk about caring for patients, advancing science, and improving health systems. But too often, we forget to talk about the well-being of the people at the center of it all: physicians. Burnout, administrative burden, and emotional exhaustion have become defining challenges of modern medicine. Today's guest has been a powerful voice advocating for physician well-being, reminding us that caring for the caregivers is essential to sustaining a strong and compassionate healthcare system. And with that, I'm honored to introduce to all of our audience today, Ms. Kim Downey. Ms. Downey, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Could you tell us a little bit about yourself and about the organization that you put together known as Stand Up for Doctors?
Sure. So I'm a pediatric physical therapist by training, and I was working in a local elementary school when I was diagnosed with thyroid cancer in the fall of 2020. So I had surgery for that and a complication, which led to more doctors and more tests and more issues over the following year. And just when I thought I would be moving forward, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. So then I had surgery and radiation for that. And then I had breast cancer again, and I had surgery and radiation on the other side. So that's the minimum of telling you. And it was 2 years of constant medical issues. And I kept thinking, one more thing and I'll be done. One more thing and I'll get back to my regular life. And I thought I was finally heading in for routine imaging in October of 22. And I showed up, and my radiologist, whom I developed like a friendly relationship with over the past 6 months, wasn't there. And I had gone specifically for him, and I asked where he was. And they said he died a month ago. And I couldn't even register that. I actually said, "Are you joking?" Because I thought I was going to see him any minute. And they said no, of course. And I asked what happened, and they said they didn't know. And somehow in that heart in my moment, like I knew he had died by suicide, and I came to find out that was true. So I Googled his name while I was sitting waiting just to see, because I just couldn't believe that was true. And I was reading his obituary and bawling. And I asked them if they could move me to another room because I just couldn't stop crying or shaking, and my arms and legs were numb. And then they found something else that was moderately suspicious for cancer that day, and I needed another biopsy. So fortunately, in the end, that wasn't cancer. But by then, I wasn't so resilient anymore. I was really struggling with the death of my doctor, and I was having a hard time moving forward and also processing and accepting some things in relation to just my medical travails of those 2 years. So I connected with Dr. Michael Hirsch. He's a GI physician in Chicago who coaches physicians. And we hopped on a call, and he was so nice. We kept communicating, and then he coached me weekly for about 12 weeks. And he really helped me, I'd say, move forward. It's not something that you ever get over, but just to be able to move forward and also process and accept some things, that he literally helped me get my brain back to kind of, not feeling so low inside. And I had also been working for a year and a half at that time, trying to support doctors and making inroads in my local healthcare system. And I hadn't been successful. And he connected me on LinkedIn. And I thought if I talked to other doctors, maybe they could help me figure out how to help my own doctors. So as I had conversations with them, they said, I think you're meant to make a bigger impact outside the system. That's going to be the easier way to do it. But I'm like, I don't have any grand aspirations. I just want to help my own doctors. But when I'd talk to them, I would say, "Oh, you would love to talk to so-and-so, or you would love to talk to so-and-so." So we kind of built a LinkedIn family and, made all these connections. And then that fall of 2023, I started the Stand Up for Doctors podcast. And initially I interviewed doctors individually, but by the next spring, since I was so good at connecting people and I had a long list of people that wanted to be on, I started pairing them up for richer conversations. And so they wouldn't have to wait so long. So since then, generally the episodes. I interviewed 2 people at a time. And then that summer of 2024, I started a Substack newsletter because I was sending my own doctors monthly email updates of like my advocacy that know they had a patient trying to help them. But this way now more people get to read my efforts is the Substack newsletter. And a year ago, January, we reached out to the first 15 doctors who were guests on my YouTube channel. And we wrote this book together, White Coats,
Mhm.
Courageous Hearts. And Kevin MD generously wrote the endorsement on the back. And then just on February 3rd of this year, we continued on and published our second book, White Coat Human Hearts. And my first book is dedicated to my doctor
Mhm.
who died. And then this book I dedicated to Michael because he's really helped me do all of these things. And then, and this one is 11 physicians, 2 physician spouses, and 2 patients. And I'm also planning a physician retreat for this fall where physicians can gather together. It's going to be a safe space. We're going to have, talks and activities, no boring lectures. It's going to be great. So those are some of
Mhm.
the things.
Man, you've done quite a bit. You've been through a lot. I mean, we're talking thyroid cancer and then breast cancer twice, and then after all of that, to have lost your radiologist is, that's a lot. That is a lot for anyone to take in. And the fact that not only have you gone through all of it, but you've come back stronger and you created literally really out of nothing a whole organization that is intent on devoting resources for physician well-being and addressing physician burnout. And we can't thank you enough for doing that. I know I'm personally biased. I'm a physician. But at the end of the day, though, even looking at this, at our healthcare system and the issues that we have from an objective point of view, it's important really to look into physician burnout and physician mental health. Because if we don't, if the people that are treating us and healing us are not doing so well, we're not going to have healers moving forward in the healthcare systems. Can't thank you enough, Miss Downey, for doing all of this. What barriers did you have when you were initially looking at putting together Stand Up for Doctors?
Well, first of all, I would say that I was teaching little kids how to hop on one foot and do sit-ups. So I had like no business skills. So that's been somewhat of an obstacle. And the fact that it's just me. Starting last spring, I did hire a virtual assistant to help me process the podcast and with the tiles for all of these things that I'm doing. But I don't make money in this work. And I kind of do it from the time I wake up till the time I go to bed, 7 days a week. And now I pay a virtual assistant. So that's also somewhat, I have to figure out how to monetize it in a way that resonates with me. So I'm like looking for sponsors,
Hmm.
for the podcast and for the retreat to help me make this sustainable because that is a big obstacle because I can't like do this all the time and lose money month after month, for the rest of my life. So that's been one obstacle and just not knowing what to do, figuring out as I go along, not having studied, business or anything.
Yeah. No, definitely. It's hard. It's hard. And I just find it incredible that you're literally doing this out of your own, the goodness of your heart, but also just out of your own bank account. And that I cannot state enough just how impressive that is. You mentioned about the 2 books that you've written. I think White Coat's Courageous Hearts has already been published. And is White
Oh,
Coat's Human Hearts already published, or it's
they
ready, or
both
is
are.
it?
So this one was published in June, and it's
Hmm.
called White Coats, Courageous Hearts, and the subtitle is True Stories of Doctors Reclaiming Their Humanity in a System That Challenges It. And 15 physicians just share, really honest stories about their experiences. And
Hmm.
then White Coats, Human Hearts was just published on February 3rd. And
Ah.
for this volume, we included physician spouses and patients because we're all part of the system and we all have a voice and a story to tell.
Now, you're also highly involved in putting together the retreat. I believe it's in October of this year. Tell us a little bit more about that retreat.
Sure. So it's going to be incredible. And every doctor coming so far is so excited. So I have a team of 14 physicians. It's by physicians for physicians, and they're leading the topics and activities. And it's actually a number of doctors, from the books that are coming. So they'll get together in person. And so the first night, we're having a welcome dinner. and we're doing improv for doctors because, like doctors in your training, you feel like you can never make a mistake. And where in improv, there are no mistakes. So there'll just be some fun, like laid back icebreakers. And it'll be a, really wonderful time. And then on Saturday and Sunday, we're interspersing doctors who will have a 5 to 10 minute discussion about topics that they know that their peers want to hear about, everything from like communication, trauma informed care for you and your patients, setting boundaries. And so after they speak for about 10 minutes, we'll break up into small groups. So it's all about the discussion, all about doctors having time to discuss these things with their colleagues. And then we're interspersing the topics with activities that are good for anyone to help get you into your body. And they're good for doctors too. And it'll be everything from Dr. Beatrice Olson is a functional medicine endocrinologist and also a professional artist. And
Hmm.
she's going to lead us in a half hour of abstract art. And we're
Wow.
making it abstract art. So a doctor will say, well, I can't draw a horse. I'm not going to participate, right? With abstract art, anything goes. And so we're also having the activities are in short chunks of 30 minutes, so doctors would feel safe and comfortable to give it a try, and everything is optional. So we're even having line dancing, a drumming circle, meditation, why write? And so all of the art, music, something about music.
Hmm.
And Saturday night we're going to have a gratitude dinner, and because in my doctor's obituary they shared that he loved music and dancing and ice cream. And so Saturday night, we're going to have music and dancing and ice cream. And it's just going to be gratitude. And then, Sunday night, we'll have like a fireside circle of connection. It's a beautiful property.
Wow. Well, this sounds exciting, and I'm gonna try my best to be there too. I promise. I'll make it happen one way or another. The next question I really wanted to look into is your background in physical therapy, and I'm a big fan and advocate of physical therapy because I have personally seen how much improvement physical therapy has made for myself personally, but also for a lot of my patients. How do you think your background in physical therapy, specifically in pediatric physical therapy, helped you overcome some of the obstacles that you faced in your life?
Well, a couple things that come to mind is first just the training, because I went to school back in the dinosaur age of like 1984 to 1988. And at that time, it was a bachelor's degree and in 4 years. So it was quite intense. In our senior year, we were in New York City. So a bus would pick us up at 7 in the morning, drive us to Jacoby, and would be there till 7 at night. And then we all had to fight for a little spot in the kitchen because like the cafeteria was closed by then, and it was quite intense. And it's before we were really using computer. Maybe to write a paper you could use a basic computer, but we would have to write out like muscle cards, like literally on index cards, with like innervation, insertion, like all of that things. So it was quite a lot. So just perseverance is one thing that I learned, because some of the classes were really hard, and just how to seek help and just keep on going. And then also I've been quite inspired by patients,
Hmm.
whether it's young children with special needs who just try their hardest. They want to do what their peers are doing, and then or the families of those children, and that they'll share their innermost thoughts with you about the whole process and of diagnosis and things going on in their life. Or patients, when you say like some are severely disabled, and just the way they keep going, or the way they could still sometimes have a lighthearted attitude, or again just trust you with their body, right? So those are a couple things. And then I myself, during these challenges, at one point I blacked out and fell and hit my head, and my nephrologist thinks low calcium caused a cardiac arrhythmia. As it turns out, over the next 2 months, my doctor figured out I had Lyme disease, a concussion, thoracic outlet syndrome, a whiplash injury, and a broken toe. So I ended up in 4 months of physical therapy myself for neck issues and dizziness, because we didn't know what was Lyme and what was a concussion.
Hmm.
And in that way, I appreciated physical therapy more than I ever did in my life. Because when patients would thank you and you appreciate it, but you're kind of like, well, of course, like this is my job, or this is what I do, this is what I know how to do. But when I was, like between having neck pain and feeling dizzy. And when another physical therapist like puts their hands on you, like literally laying on of hands, and helps you feel better and then help me get rid of the dizziness, like it changed my life again. And I was like, oh my gosh, it just helped me appreciate physical therapy in a way I had never done in like 30 years of practicing as a physical therapist.
Mhm. Well, I gotta ask this question now because you're talking about Lyme disease and a fall and a concussion. You've been through so much. At any point, was there any point in your life where I know you mentioned about your radiologist passing away, and that was a very low point. But was there any time in life when you just felt this is just way too much? I should just give up right now? Or were you always willing to overcome these obstacles? Because you've been hit by quite a bit, and it's amazing and incredible the journey that you've had, and we're so grateful and thankful for having you here and for advocating for physicians. But I was just curious, have you ever felt, okay, well, this is just way too much for me?
Well, sure, and there was even more after that. The tamoxifen they put me on to reduce recurrence of the breast cancers damaged my uterus. So a year ago, I had a total hysterectomy. And
Yeah.
at this moment, I'm actually undergoing further testing, and I hope that we're not going to find anything else. But I would say my faith is really important to me, and I have a wonderful women's fellowship group. And I have to say, I've been blessed with wonderful family and friends, so I'm well resourced. I know that I'm loved and that there's so many people that are there for me. So I never have thoughts of quote unquote like giving up, but after all that happened, between having processed and accept a lot of things related to like some things that happened during the medical journey of those 2 years, and then my doctor dying, when I felt low, I didn't know how to feel better because I am usually pretty resilient, and I usually could pick myself up. Like I had a couple miscarriages before our son was born. I grieved appropriately and moved forward. And then I watched my dad take his last breath and I grieved appropriately and moved forward. But this time was I guess, the first time in my life that I did feel somewhat stuck. So
Mhm.
our local cancer support center has all that's all free resources. So I tried to take advantage because I didn't know what I needed or what would work. So they had like a midweek mindfulness, and I had never tried meditation. And they had like little like art things. And I took a little piano lessons, and I was reading. I ordered like 20 books, a lot of things from Brene Brown, Daring Greatly, to Alan Watts, The Wisdom of Insecurity. Like I was just trying to look at those books. And then someone from my women's fellowship group who's very insightful, like she had lent me a book or two. And then we even sit and had like academic discussions about it. So what I would say is all of those things helped a little bit, but it wasn't until I met Dr. Michael Hirsch and started coaching with him that he really, again, like I'd say, he helped me get my brain back and really helped me now. I'd say that I do feel more like myself, than that challenging time.
We'll all be praying for you that everything's gonna go
Thanks.
well, and I'm confident everything's gonna be good. But, you know, you have now spent the majority of your lifetime within the healthcare industry, and you've seen all facets of it, both as a patient and also as a physical therapist. Where do you think we are heading towards as an industry in terms of what do you think is the future of the healthcare industry at this point?
Well, I would say that, and I recently had a conversation with a psychiatrist. And again, these things didn't happen to me till 2020, so early in the pandemic. So before then, I wasn't so much involved in physician spaces. I was practicing, as you said, as a physical therapist. So I had experienced burnout, moral injury, and that's how I can identify with a lot of struggles that physicians face. And I can also name layers of struggle on top of that, unique to physicians. So when I spoke with this psychiatrist who's a seasoned physician, and I said, I get the sense that before the pandemic, that even more doctors would struggle in silence, would struggle alone, were told to put your head down and just keep going. And weren't comfortable being vulnerable or talking about these things. But I got the sense that during the pandemic, things were so bad. Many physicians either left or they were struggling or their practices slowed down and they wanted to figure out, kind of like me, right? How can I help myself? And some of them found like therapy and coaching, and it helped them so much. Then they went on to become coaches to support their peers. So, in that sense, I feel like it is a very positive thing that I feel like doctors are willing to share their stories. And I say that every time a doctor shares their story, another doctor feels less alone. And that Dr. Kathy Stepien says everyone wins when physicians are well. And Dr. Amna Shabir says, physician advocacy is patient advocacy. So
Hmm.
those three things have become my mantras. And just because all of the connections like we are making and other people are making on LinkedIn, I feel like we are building this like snowball or groundswell, because I'm even connected with physicians and others around the world
Yeah.
making an impact. Conversation with some people is, how can we do this? Like, doctors like have solutions for these things, or some of them are already doing things, but how can we connect them with each other? And I feel like we are going to be heading in a direction where we can connect, the change makers and make things better for doctors and patients.
Perfect. Excellent. Well, this has been a wonderful conversation today, and we've touched a lot, specifically with Stand Up for Doctors in the two books that I haven't had a chance to read, but I definitely they're on my reading list at this point. White Coat's Courageous Hearts and White Coat's Human Hearts. Thank you so much for coming by today and getting us a chance to listen to your story, just an inspirational story about grit and about overcoming obstacles. One of the things I wanted to ask you was, before we leave today, do you have any words of wisdom for any of our listeners that are looking into going into advocacy? Because advocacy is not easy. There's really no identifiable route to go through it.
Sure. So I would say, like find like your passion or your purpose, and it can be anything that you're interested in. So even like if you read the news and there's something that really touches on you, like even if you're busy, everyone can do something. So even if you contribute to a cause, like that counts. Or if you can volunteer for a cause, and if you want to support physicians, you could join me with Stand Up for Doctors, and I'll find a place for you. So then once you found something, or you already have something that you're passionate about and would like to explore, just take the next right step. And I'm not patient by nature, so sometimes I get impatient, and you want to see the whole big picture. You want to know, where things are going. And sometimes there's going to be detours. So you don't have to have it all mapped out. Just take the next right step. Like think of one thing that you can do, and then also get support. If you're not sure, if you're really confused, talk to a coach or a business coach or just someone who's further along in the process than you are. And just know that you will face obstacles. So as Dr. Michael Hirsch has told me, it just shows, that's a sign that says, nope, can't go that way. And then it helps show you the path that you can go on. And so that's why I'd say obstacles are great, even though I don't like to hear that sometimes. And then one more thing he shared with me that has sustained me is just keep going, because sometimes, with entrepreneurship or advocacy, it can feel a little bit discouraging, and, you might be tempted to say, what is the purpose? Am I really making a difference? But then sometimes like someone will say something that inspires you, or you will see how you're making a difference. And so just keep going.
Mhm. No, definitely. Obstacles are great, right? The obstacles are what define our lives and how we overcome them. So, just amazing conversation with you today, Miss Downey. Thank you so much. And for those of our listeners that have been inspired by what Miss Downey's trying to do, and if you're interested in sponsoring or in reaching out to her, please feel free to reach out to us, and we'll definitely get you in touch with her. Once again, Miss Downey, thank you so much for coming by and sharing us your story and just the remarkable, amazing things that you're doing. Thank you.
Well, and thank you. And I appreciate you as well. And I feel blessed that we've connected.
If you found this conversation valuable, share it with someone who could use it. And if you're on Apple, we'd love to hear your favorite takeaway and a review. See you next week.